to the season 2 finale of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo. And before I start, I just want to say thank you guys for tuning into this season of the podcast. It is very appreciated. So, thank you very much. So, the film that'll be closing the finale that I will be discussing is The Man from U.N.C.L.E. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is a 2015 spy film that is based on the 1964 TV series of the same name. The film is directed by Guy Ritchie, who's known for directing films such as Sherlock Holmes and Snatch. The film stars Henry Cavill, Armie Hammer, and Alicia Vikander. So here's the plot. In the 1960s, with the Cold War in play, CIA agent Napoleon Solo, played by Henry Cavill, successfully helps Gabby Teller, played by Alicia Vikander, to defect West Germany. Sorry, let's just go back. So, Napoleon Solo, he successfully helps Gabby Teller to defect to West Germany, despite the intimidating opposition of KGB agent Ilya Kuryakin, played by Armie Hammer. Later, all three unexpectedly find themselves working together in a joint mission to stop a private criminal organization from using Gabby's father's scientific expertise to construct their own nuclear bomb. Through clenched teeth and stylish pose, all three must find a way to cooperate for the sake of world peace, even as they pursue their own agendas. The film was released in theaters back in August 14th, 2015, which opened at number 3 with 13.4 million. So films that beat this at the box office were Straight Outta Compton and Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. It made over $107 million during its theatrical release, so about 45.4 million was domestic, while 61.6 million was international. In terms of reception, on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 68% critic score. Here's what they have to say with a consensus. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. tries to distract from an unremarkable story with charismatic stars and fizzy set pieces, adding up to an uneven action thriller with just enough style to overcome its lack of substance. The audience, however, gave it 73%. The film is available on VOD, so check your local provider. Alright, first discoveries. So, I believe when this film was about to be released in theaters, I might have seen some trailers here and there, maybe in the theater or on TV. It didn't really interest me at the time because that was the same time Straight Outta Compton came out, so I was more interested in that. But I thought it looked intriguing for a spy period piece. So I think I saw reviews at the time were kind of mixed. So that was also a factor as in why I chose not to see it at the time. But many years later, I saw reviews, people recommending to see this movie. So last year, I decided to finally rent it on the Cineplex store because I got a free voucher from Cineplex. And I really enjoyed it. Does it elevate as a spy film? No, but it's certainly an entertaining one because it's very clear that the filmmakers, they wanted to pay homage to the spy films or films of the 1960s. And I say, I was pretty convinced by it for the most part. And it seems like everyone was having a great time, so I had a fun time as well too. Let's go on to highlights. So going in with the 60s. So clearly it's a throwback to that era, through the score by Daniel Pemberton. Loved the instruments, the various instruments that's used. And with the songs from artists from that time period, including Nina Simone and Roberta Flack, it was just a nice touch to it. So it's kind of like the cherry on top. And also, too, the costumes look exquisite, like very expensive. Because with Gabby, I loved her outfits that she wears throughout the film. I would say my favorite was the green and white dress that she wears when she meets her uncle Rudy at the racetrack. And also to Victoria, like she has some nice outfits as well too. I loved the white and black one that she wears when she meets Napoleon Solo, where she drugs his drinks, and I find, yeah, like the outfits are incredible. It's like I would love to wear any of those outfits, but they're probably like tough to find. So the costume designer, I would say, did an amazing job with that. The lens flares, it has like some lens flares, particularly like with the chase sequence when Napoleon is pursuing Ilya. Like I loved it kind of like yeah, I guess that does a throwback to the 60s, because like if you look at films during that period, like with the James Bond movies from that period, like it uses a lot of those techniques as well too. I would say along too with there's some graininess during the opening credits, because it looks a bit washed out, look like they use a Polaroid camera. I don't know if that was the case, or if they use effects, but I would say I felt like I was watching a movie during that time period with the 60s, even though like it has some modern techniques and with the director's signature trademarks. I would say they did a good job with paying respect to the 1960s. And I love too with the noir type lighting, going back to the chase sequence, because it gives like a mystery feel, like for both Napoleon and Ilya. Because we don't know much about their characters except that Napoleon is part of CIA and Ilya is with the KGB. So we don't know like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Well, it's probably safe to assume that the KGB are the bad guys and CIA are the good guys. But yeah, like that was certainly entertaining to watch. And yeah, like I said, clearly like their influence from the spy films of that period, like especially with the early Sean Connery Bond films. And going back to the opening and credits and the closing credits to add, I loved the use of the red and black color scheme, because I don't know, it kind of puts you like into that mood, that adventurous mood, so to speak. And adding like the yellow font kind of brings like a pulpy feel to it. So yeah, like because with those, it pretty much pays, like I said, respect to the 1960s and puts you like into that mood to make you as a viewer to go along for the ride, so to speak. And one of my favorite, I would say, aspects of the film is the relationship between Napoleon and Ilya. Because clearly, because they're working for different agencies, they do not get along. And once they are paired up together, we see them bantering back and forth quite a lot because of their differences of opinion. Like, for instance, when Napoleon tells Ilya and Gabby that there are henchmen following them, he Ilya pretty much says that he already knows and all that stuff, and he says he'll handle it accordingly. But Napoleon urges him to act scared because with his cover as an architect, he would not know how to fight. And it seems like Ilya doesn't want to like take that feedback, but he has no choice at the end of the day because he'll blow the cover and blow the mission. So, and also too, there was another moment when Solo he criticizes Ilya's bow tie. It's a weird bow tie. I don't know why he would wear it. He pretty much urges him to wear like a necktie instead, and of course he doesn't listen. And then it's so funny that cutting to the next scene, he wears that necktie. And also, too, they bug each other's rooms with their devices, which is hilarious because clearly, like I said, they don't trust each other. But it's nice though, like as the film progresses, they respect each other, and in ways they develop a friendship. Like especially when it comes to Ilya's watch that he wears that he got from his father when that was stolen by the muggers. Solo was able to retrieve it from a henchman and gives it to him towards the film when it seems like they were about to kill each other over the disc. But yeah, like in ways though, like this movie is like a spy, like buddy cop movie. Even though like we have Gabby like as a main character as well, it's really about the relationship between Solo and Kuryakin at the end of the day. And I also like to, with Napoleon Solo, his character, he's a flirt. He is a womanizer. Because look with the when he first meets Victoria, he does the whole tablecloth trick by pulling the cloth without moving the items on the table, which I'd have to say kudos to Henry Cavill for that because I wouldn't be able to pull that off personally, but I imagine that took lots of practice. And I wondered, did they had to do multiple takes if he kept messing up, or if the lighting or whatever wasn't right? But I'd say kudos to Henry Cavill, and it shows that he has gentle hands. Who I believe Ilya said that, or it might have been Victoria. I don't remember, but but yeah, like he's very quick with his hands because his character is essentially a thief or a con artist. If you remember during that whole montage when the KGB tells Ilya info on Napoleon Solo. And also too, he sleeps with the hotel clerk. And it's hilarious. He says, "Oh, stay for 5 minutes." And she's like, "Oh, I know your 5 minutes, Mr. Solo." So I thought, yeah, that was quite hilarious. And in ways though, this is really like Henry Cavill's James Bond film. So in a way you could say it's his audition to be Bond because since like 2000, in the early 2000s, before Daniel Craig was cast, he's always been in consideration to play James Bond. Now I don't think he'll be cast as James Bond. That's mainly because of age and all that stuff, because they want to cast younger actors to do multiple films. Again, that's just my opinion, how I see it. But if he were to be cast in that franchise, like he'd be great as either as an agent that works alongside Bond, or he could be a great Bond villain. So, hey, if any of the Bond producers are listening here, like cast Henry Cavill as a villain or as a fellow agent. And Kuryakin, so Ilya, he often gets triggered in this movie. When he gets to that space, he reminds me like of that moment in the TV show Arthur, when Arthur is getting visibly upset at DW for being annoying because you see the shot of him clenching his fist like he wants to beat her up. That that's what kind of like came into my mind when Ilya like wants to like beat up someone because he gets triggered. Because we first see that when what was it? That scene when Napoleon and Ilya are together, where Napoleon brings up his with Ilya's his backstory with his parents. I think his father like gets to prison while his mother is a sex worker, something along those lines. And clearly, like if someone like pushes him to the edge. Like it's funny, we see like the hands trembling and that cold stare, like the Paddington cold stare. It's funny. And there was like a moment too in that same scene. He flips the table pretty much to express his rage, but knows he can't beat up Napoleon because they have to work together for the sake of the mission. Because with him flipping the table reminds me of the moment when Teresa from the Housewives of New Jersey flips the table, that infamous moment. So in ways that he pulled a Teresa Giudice moment. So that was hilarious. And also too towards the end when his boss threatens him to get the disc and kill Napoleon if necessary. He destroys that hotel room. And yeah, like clearly he gets upset fairly quickly. Like he, in ways, he has like a an anger management problem, but at least he keeps his cool, unless if he's by himself at the hotel room. But yeah, and with Gabby and Kuryakin, they kind of have this will they or won't they like become a couple? Because it's always like hinted, it looks like it's going in that direction, but it doesn't go quite there. Because when we see them together in the hotel room, she's drunk while dancing, she falls on top of him robotly and then falls asleep because it looked like he wanted to kiss her because they're that close. But that doesn't happen. And also too, when they're together at the hotel room, it looked like they're about to embrace, but doesn't happen because she has to go meet Waverly at his space. But yeah, like because it seems like at the beginning they did not get along because, like I said, difference of opinion. But who knows? Like there could be something there because I wouldn't be surprised if after their mission in Istanbul they become a couple. But yeah, clearly like that's most likely not gonna happen because of them, being like the opposites, so to speak. The cast, like I feel like everyone did a good job with their performances because it's interesting that most of the actors they don't even use their natural accents. So yeah, because if like I hadn't seen any of them before, I probably would have bought like those accents more. I would have thought like that's how they speak. But yeah, like it does wonders. And I want to point out with Elizabeth Debicki, she plays Victoria. She's the main villain because she does a phenomenal job as a villain. And if this movie kind of convinces me that she should be cast in a Bond film, either as the villain or as an ally, so to speak. Because, yeah, like she looks charismatic on screen, even with all of her previous roles, like with The Great Gatsby and Widows. Like, she always brings it every time when she is on screen. And I would say too, like for my favorite sequence in the film was that chase sequence because I loved how like it has a bit of mystery to it because we don't know who's whose side like the audience is on. Like it's safe to assume that like with Henry Cavill with the CA they're the good guys, but like we don't fully know like who those characters are. And it's hilarious though that with Ilya, he's pretty much like the Terminator. Because he keeps going, even though there's obstacles thrown towards him. So, and he rips like a piece of the car that Gabby and Solo are in. So I just wonder, like, is his character bionic? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, but yeah, he keeps going and going, and especially too, like when he's going after Alexander, like on the motorcycle, he throws that motorcycle towards Alexander, which I imagine is very, very heavy, but he pulls it off. So again, he could be bionic, but we don't know. And let's go on to the lowlights section. So the style. So like for those like are familiar with Guy Ritchie's work, like he has a unique style to it, and I saw like with some of the reviews, like they noted that the style like overpowers the substance, so it's pretty much style over substance. And for me, like I didn't mind the style to a degree because I felt like, does every twist have to be shown through flashbacks to know what actually went down? Because I felt like that wasn't necessary at the end of the day. But like for instance, when Napoleon steals the invitation from Waverly, we see like through a reveal that Waverly didn't mind it because he was smiling, and we see like flashbacks of Napoleon like stealing the jewelry from Victoria and from the Countess. So, but yeah, like even though like it's nice, but for me it just wasn't necessarily. And if montages like they were used, I guess, to speed up the film, again, like I didn't feel like the length, like I wasn't bored while watching the movie. Like it's very fast paced, which is nice, but it seems as though like they use the montages to like get to the point of the film, which for me it didn't work because especially when Solo and Kuryakin are heading to the compound that's owned by Alexander and Victoria, he pretty much shows us a lot of flashy cuts of them with the soldiers infiltrating the place without actually fully showing the action. So for me, I just wish they showed more of the action because I don't know if that was a director's choice or if it was a studio's choice. It could be either or maybe both. I don't know, but for me, yeah, that was a low light. Another low light. So let's go back to the watch. So clearly, this watch has a significance for Kuryakin, but why does he wear it while undercover? I mean, Spy 101, do not bring your personal belongings to a mission. You don't see James Bond bring anything personal of his, nor does Jason Bourne. So why does he do it? Like, it doesn't make sense. I get that it has significance to him because it was his father's watch, but at the same time, you don't bring that stuff with you because it might get stolen, which actually did by the muggers, which I have to say, they are one of the nicest, or probably the nicest muggers I've ever seen before on screen. And I was not convinced by that because they're usually not nice when they want to get what they want. But at the end of the day, it was on Ilya for that watch to be stolen. Because he could have just stored it at the hotel or left it at his place. Either way, he should not have brought it with him on the mission. That's like I said, Spy 101. Do not bring your personal stuff to the mission. So also too, so this is when Solo and Kuryakin they are being pursued by the bad guys on the boat. So we see Solo, he falls out of the water and he swims to shore. He gets into this truck. So he decides to have a meal that he found inside the truck. So I wondered, is that food sanitary? Is it fresh? But clearly he's enjoying it. I mean, personally myself, I would not eat it because you don't know where that has been, how long it hasn't been there. But like I get when you're on the go, like you need to eat and all that stuff, but still, no, I wouldn't touch that because again, it could be poisoned. You don't know, or infected. But it seemed clear that that was put for comedic relief to show that Solo is, taking his time while Kuryakin is trying to evade the bad guys on the boat. So, also, too, another low light. So, after when they escape from that chase sequence, we see Victoria calls Solo's hotel room. And then once he doesn't pick up, she heads straight there with henchmen. So I'm just wondering, why does she go there? Does she suspect he's not who he says he is? Because before, she seems to be impressed by Solo when, he did the tablecloth trick and stealing the jewelry from her and the Countess. But yeah, I just feel like in ways it was plot convenience. Pretty much to raise her suspicions that Solo is an agent, but yeah, that just did not work for me. And so I would say for me, one of the plot twists that I had an issue with was that Gabby decides to reveal Solo and Kuryakin to the bad guys. Why? So she could get to her father? That does not make sense because it's safe to assume that with Victoria and Alexander, they have their suspicions of them being agents because, with Solo being missing from his room and with Kuryakin with that incident with him beating up the boys like at the washroom. So I felt that wasn't necessary. But then it was also revealed that, oh, she's an agent for Waverly who told her to sell those guys out to the bad guys. So I'm like, no, 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 no. And also a no, that Gabby is an agent under Waverly who works for MI6. I'm like, what? Because honestly, like, she'd be better off if she was an informant where like she was recruited, by Waverly, to infiltrate Alexander Victoria or whatever. But with her being an actual agent, I don't really buy that because she allows herself to get captured and depends on Solo and Ilya to rescue her. So I don't know. As an agent, I don't know if she could handle herself, but whatever. And also, too, I wasn't surprised that with Rudy, that he was like a Nazi criminal, like a crazy person, because I mean, with the choice with the actor, because he played the director, I believe, for the fictional film In Inglorious Bastards. So because you see at times like if a certain actor, let's say, gets cast like as a bad guy, like for example, let's just say Guy Pearce with Without Remorse. It was no surprise at the end that he turned out to be the bad guy in the film. So here, like with that actor being cast as a bad guy, I was not surprised by that. And also, too, the CIA and KGB, they tell Solo and Kuryakin to like kill each other at the end, which does not happen. But then Waverly tells them that their bosses decide to give them to Waverly. So I'm just like, what? So what about the disc? So I guess Waverly gets solo in karaoke and the disc, I'm just like, that just does not make sense. And I wondered too, like, because Waverly gives them the code name Uncle at the end. And when I did a bit of research, Uncle is supposed to be an independent organization. So I'm just wondering, is that a part of MI6? Because we don't see like Waverly leaving his job for MI6 to start his own thing. So I'm just wondering, is that an offshoot of MI6? I don't know. And the last low light that I have, so the song You Work For Me by Laura Avula is not included in both the film and the soundtrack, even though that song was created specifically for the film and was used in promos. So I'm just wondering why was not in the film at the end of the day. It's not even in the closing credits, which does not make sense. I'm just wondering, was it a copyright reason? But I don't think that would make sense. Was that a director's choice or the studio's choice? Again, I don't know. That just does not make sense. Or was that song made specifically for the trailers of the movie? Because, again, that doesn't make sense either. I could not find research on that, but if anyone knows, let me know on social media at RD Movies Pod. Let's go on to trivia. So, there's a lot of fun facts about this film. I'm not going to read all. So, a notable one was that they decided, the filmmakers, they wanted to have the film take place during the 60s to allow it to have its own world and its own tone and all that sorts of deal, to set itself apart from like the Bourne films, or like with James Bond, or any recent spy films that takes place during the present. So yeah, I commend that choice, because clearly it did, though, because I also saw that this movie is supposed to serve as a prequel to the series. So I'm just wondering, like, if it wasn't for them to setting itself apart, like, was it intended to be connected to the series? Again, I don't know, but whatever. So, Guy Ritchie, he apparently looked at films such as Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid for inspiration, trying to create a tongue twister, between humor and seriousness, and attempting to cross genres to a degree. I'm like, okay, because I have not seen that film. I hear it's great, but okay. So, the only actors that used their accents, their natural accents in the film, were Hugh Grant, Sylvester Groth, who played Uncle Rudy, and Luca Calvani, who played Alexander. So, like I said, if I hadn't seen any of those actors before, I would have certainly bought that they were actually those ethnicities. But yeah, like I said, they did a good job with that. And for a long time, this movie has been through development hell, because at different stages, they've had different directors or actors attached to it. So, most notably, Steven Soderbergh, he was attached as director, and George Clooney was cast as Napoleon Solo. So, Clooney, he dropped out of the film back in 2011 because of health problems he had at the time, and then Soderbergh dropped out 3 months later. Interesting. And there are a lot of actors, I guess, in consideration for Napoleon, which included Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ryan Gosling, Robert Pattinson, Matt Damon, Christian Bale, Chris Pine, John Hamm, and Tom Cruise, who was cast as Napoleon Solo, but dropped out to do Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Interesting. But then eventually Henry Cavill was cast, who apparently auditioned for the role of Ilya Kuryakin. So luckily for Henry Cavill, he did get cast not in as Ilya, but as Napoleon Solo. And for the role of Ilya, Joel Edgerton, he auditioned for that role but didn't get it because Armie Hammer was cast in the role instead. So interesting. And for Gabby, before Alicia Vikander was cast, actresses that were in consideration or auditioned included Gemma Arterton, Alice Eve, Emilia Clarke, and Felicity Jones. So interesting. And with Napoleon's the tablecloth trick, Henry Cavill actually did that himself because it was not a visual effect. I never suspected it was, anyways. And he was trained of that trick by British variety star Matt Ricardo. So, like I said, kudos to Henry Cavill for that trick. And lastly, they wanted to use practical effects as much as possible. So, special effects supervisor Dominic Toy offered an example. The stunt driving positions we built onto the cars were framed out as they would have done pre-CG. So the camera captures what the audience will see in frame rather than filming the whole rig and having CG painted out later. And additionally, real equipment salvaged from the 60s was used on some sets and set pieces. So yeah, like kudos to that, because it's nice, especially these days, to see like an action film that actually uses practical effects than shooting in front of a green screen. So kudos to the film. All right, lastly, this important question. Should this movie be rediscovered? And I say yes, it does, because it's an entertaining spy film that pays homage to the 60s. And it's full of suspense and is also full of humor, so you get the best of both worlds. Like I said, this does not elevate the spy genre, but it's certainly a great addition to the spy genre by setting itself apart, mainly because of the time setting. The performances from the cast I enjoyed. The technical aspects I really liked for the most part, and I'd say the music is solid. So please check out this movie if you haven't seen it already. So that concludes this episode of the podcast. So you could follow myself on Twitter and Instagram at Nomfanelo. You could follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RDMoviesPod, and you can use the hashtag RDMoviesPod. You can answer the question on Spotify. You could like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform that is available. And since this is the season 2 finale, the next episode will be the season 2 after show. And I would love for you guys to submit questions or comments or suggestions for future titles for the podcast. So if you'd like to do so, you could email rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you can leave a voice message on anchor.fm/rdmoviespod. And please do that by September 15th. If you are listening to this after that date, no worries, you could still submit those by email or voice message. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast, and also for tuning in to this season of the podcast. And until next time.